technology, and I seem to have figured it out. We are now live on, I can't even tell you how many channels. This is incredible. Hi, everybody. Welcome to my office. Steve Martel here. I literally feel like I'm talking to myself, so this is absolutely bizarre for me. Please, as everybody starts coming in, I would like to know who's here with me. I have a little screen on my side. I believe I do. And yeah, I've got messages coming in here already. So we're on Facebook at a couple channels that we have. I have my real estate channels. I have my business growth channels. I have my self-improvement. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Twitter. So this is pretty interesting. It's a new program that I've literally never used. So we're going to have fun. So I want to wait a couple more minutes before we get officially started into the content. This is going to be an extremely content-heavy event. My goal today is to be able to, for the first time ever, share with you my complete teachings and trainings on what in the world is going on with the economy today. And it's probably one of the best times ever. I mean, for 15 years now, I've been teaching individuals how real estate cycles work and how buyers drive real estate pricing and sellers and so on and so forth by supply and demand. So yes, we will be talking about that today, but most importantly, I want to be able to break down how an economy works, because it goes way further than just looking at real estate cycles. Because right now we're living in a world, you'll probably see my lovely Crystal in the background here.
Hi,
guys. Technology, I need some help in the background. And I'm not really good at, hi everybody, I'm seeing all the highs coming through here. I'm not going to be answering questions. Crystal's going to be in the background here, but it is very important. As I'm going through the content, I absolutely need you to write your questions. Even though it seems like I'm not answering them, I will be going through them after we're finished the live presentation. I've got so many slides. I already have a hard time staying on topic all the time. So I don't want to be too distracted. Hey, Paul, what's going on, buddy? I see, here I am distracted already. I think Crystal's trying to tell me something.
Two things.
What's
One,
up, hon?
you can't see who it is that's saying hello. So
No, but
it just says
that's why I said
there,
Paul, because
so.
Paul actually said, hey, it's Paul.
And Chris Urquhart says hello as well.
Hey, what's up, Chris? How's the family, buddy?
Can you check your audio? There's a slight delay, so if you need to
Oh,
just double check.
please tell me the technology doesn't
click
suck.
on audio.
Sorry, guys, we're just getting set up here.
Check your input that it's through.
Yeah. Oh, baby. Let's do my proper microphone. Here, let's do this. Thank you for your patience, everyone. Promise the content will be worth it. Can you see how now I'm on my podcaster? Can I get a thumbs up if you still hear from me, guys? I just want to make sure my microphone, I just changed it to a little better, more professional. I'm not sure if there's going to be a delay. Well, I still see my voices going up and down here. So, all right, guys. So basically what I'm saying is I am not going to be looking at the chat because it will completely throw me off here. But please, I'm going to be covering so many topics. I'm going to be going through economy, how markets work. I'm going to talk about interest rates. I'm going to talk about printing of money. I'm going to talk about the euphoria of markets. Why did Bitcoin go to 60 and it did exactly what I said, and yet it's not over, crashing? If we look at it today, it's gone down about 45% from its high 6 months ago. Why did that happen? I'm not here to talk about Bitcoin. I'm talking about any market. I don't care if it's cattle. I don't care if it's milk. I don't care if it's real estate, cars, anything. The economy is a machine. And once you understand how central banks, government, and human behavior all intertwine themselves together, you'll be able to understand why I was able to predict the 2008 real estate crash. Real estate would double, triple, or even quadruple in some markets like Florida and Phoenix when we bought real estate in 2011. Then I predicted, and I screwed up on this one, I had predicted in 2008 to 2020, we would slowly be at the peak of the real estate cycle, and we should have seen some downfalls. But who in the world would have predicted the pandemic? We hadn't seen a pandemic since 1918. So that put in another layer that put me into such a research mode over the last few years. I'm seeing so many people here that, I miss you guys so much. For people that know me and even people that haven't seen me in a long time, last 6-7 years, I've been kind of retired. And, especially from the public's eye. Now, I know my wife laughs all the time when I say retired. During my retirement, we started a massive construction company out in Phoenix, all remote, and I did that on purpose, where we were rehabbing 90 apartment units per month. Well, actually, that was our best month, but our average was 70 to 90 units. Because one of the biggest challenges, one, I had said, okay, the peak of buying period was 2018 to 2020, not anticipating a pandemic and the government's just printing and printing money, which we're going to cover the repercussions of such terrible fiscal management, and what could potentially happen, how to protect ourselves, and so on and so forth. But anyway, so I said, hey, if there's stupid AZ credit out there, which we're going to talk about during this presentation, how could I take advantage of that financially? So we took advantage of building a construction company that had, gosh, how many employees did we have at that time? 2019, close to 50 independent.
Yeah.
If government agencies are watching, independent contractors, not employees. Anyways, let's get to the topic. Okay, guys, let's get to the conversation of what in the world is happening in the economy. Now, before I even keep going forward, we did put a banner. Yes, I can see it on my screen here. If you are not registered and you just happen to see this on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, or one of the channels that we're on Facebook, please make sure to go subscribe to onepropertychallenge.com. Today, we're only talking about the economy, but tomorrow is one of the most important topics. Knowing what's going on in the economy, what is the best strategy to use to buy real estate? Because what I'm going to be talking during the presentation today is there's an opportunity that is bigger than real estate prices going up. And it's happening right in front of our faces. So we need to take advantage of that. So buying real estate, even though we're at a top of a peak of some kind, it don't matter. Actually, let me show you 2 or 3 slides down here. Let me put I've got 5 screens in front of me, so it may be a little confusing here. So here is the agenda for today, okay? I want you to understand how the economic machine works. Interest, printing of money, transaction, consumer goods, prices increasing, so on and so forth. I want to cover all of that so that you can then determine exactly which markets would be the best, because I'm going to show you a slide in 10 seconds here. 10 seconds, a minute, where I show you that during the 2008 crisis in America, well, let's say we say 2008, that was the peak and the day that it crashed in fall. I remember I was in Atlanta shopping for real estate then, but it started about 2005 was the peak of the real estate prices, and then it slowly went down, and then kaplang, the bottom hit. I forgot my point. Oh, yeah. There's still a lot of markets that went up in price during the financial crisis. And that's what I want you to be able to identify. What are the markets that are primed to explode during a potential recession, or worse yet, depression? Okay. And then we're going to talk about what's the current state of the economy right now. So, with the understanding of how the machine works, what kind of issues are going to be arising that we are already witnessing? Has anybody seen a positive day for the stock market in 2022? I don't believe so. So we're going to talk about that, okay? And we're going to talk about the real estate cycle. So how do we take this economic machine that is a sum accumulation of every single market? Remember, we're all real estate here, and I've got a lot of business people on this, on some of our channels as well. But what is the repercussion for real estate as a market? But everyone else can use the exact same information I'm going to be sharing with you to predict as best as possible what's going to happen in stock markets. The S&P 500, the NASDAQ, a stock in itself like Apple, Tesla, Amazon, any of the markets or individual pieces. So that's why it's so important, okay? And how to find the best market. So that's really the goal today. I know for most of you, I promised you it's going to be 60 to 90 minutes. I'm going to do my best. And I can promise you, people that know me are probably laughing their butts off right now, knowing that that's impossible for me, okay? So I'm going to try my best to stick to the topic. So again, if you have yet to sign up for the rest of the week, my goal is in a week, you are able to identify the best deal. My goal would be 5 deals in the best market that you can buy no money down or credit. I hate using those words, but it is true because it's all about knowledge and creativity. It's that simple, okay? So, why are we even talking about buying in a different place than you live? And that's very important here. I've got people from all over the world, from Canada, from America. I've got people from UK and Australia that are on the line with us right now. Everything I'm going to be talking about is worldwide. It does not matter if you live here in North America or you're in the UK or Australia. The dynamics are the same. Now, I doubt as heck I've got anybody living in a communist country that it will be a very different conversation, okay? But I don't think that's the case with us right now. So I won't even address it. Second, I'm going to be taking a lot of statistics from the US because I am sorry for all our Canadian friends with us right now, UK, Australia's not as bad, New Zealand, South Africa, but we are in the deepest, scariest place right now, especially in Canada. US is doing a lot better than Canada is. Yeah, inflation was a little lower. We'll talk about that. That's a different topic. But when you look at the key ingredient, if you remember my teachings, the one, oh, I'm not even sharing my screen. Here I am. Sorry, guys.
Boop. New technology.
Oops. So anyways, I'm looking at a screen here. If, what was I even saying here?
Share statistics in the US.
I'm using US statistics because America is still the best and easiest country to be investing in when it comes to creating cash flow. If anybody can prove me wrong, and there is a better place in Canada or any of the other countries out there that can create as good, predictable, and consistent cash flow as the US can. If you can even prove to me there's somewhere magical in Canada that you can invest and get some cash flow, period, without putting 100% down, properly leveraged, then maybe I will be entertained by the idea. But again, you can use this. Sorry, guys. You can use this entire presentation in any country if you do not want to go in the US, okay? Now, I'm not talking about accounting. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff for this presentation. So let's go forward. So in 2008, like I mentioned, US went through what they called a bubble. I will explain what a bubble is. I'll explain how it happens and so on and so forth. But I want to talk about this very importantly because you cannot take a country and say or predict its future in itself because there are so many other moving pieces, state by state, city by city, county by county, okay? And why I'm saying this, let me go back to my proper screen over here. We take a look at, if you look at my philosophies, there's two types of real estate markets. You've got the sexy markets and you've got the emerging markets. In a very simplistic way to put it, a sexy market is where you would want to travel to, period, okay? It ain't that sexy to go travel to Huntsville, Alabama. But going to Florida on the ocean, going to Phoenix to go golfing, whatever you can think of, sexy markets are markets that the mass populations want to go to, which creates higher demand. But at the same time, higher demand, as you will see when we talk about the economy, creates bigger whiplash and crashes, bigger cycle movements. So I've always called them rock and roll markets. They will go up like a skyrocket. My Phoenix properties, how many people here with me have had Phoenix properties or Florida properties? Share with us right now, guys. What is the percentage that your property went from, right? So if you were with me back in 2010, 11, and 12, and maybe even 13, you would have been able to buy a single family home, 3 beds, bungalow for anywhere from 50 to 60 in a decent neighborhood in Phoenix. Today, it's worth 250 to 300 if you don't have 15 offers that come in on the property. Real estate has skyrocketed. Now, if I was to bring you to Charlotte, that's the next slide anyways, the markets did not go up 2, 3, or 4 times, but it did exactly what an emerging market will do. It will slowly and predictably increase in pricing because it's not as rock and roll. It's nice and steady, and that's usually where you want to buy your apartment complexes and where you want to have your cash flowing properties, okay? And we'll talk about strategies, but that's tomorrow. Now, here's why I'm sharing this slide right now. We showed you 2 seconds ago that during the 2008 crisis, which again started around 2005, slowly made its way to 2008 where the bottom hit, there were markets that actually increased in pricing. And that's what's very important. Actually, this is the wrong slide.
Can you remove the banner temporarily? They said they can't see the bottom of the slide because it's covered by your banner.
You guys don't want to see my beautiful face? Oh. I don't even know how to do that, Crystal. Can I just do that?
The overlay button.
Who wants to see Crystal do it?
Okay.
Come on. It's because I pressed the chat button.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Technical difficulties.
How come I can't take your mouse over to graphics?
Oh, I don't know, man. This whole I've got too many. There we go.
There you go.
Graphics.
And then just click on it again. Yeah. Just so they can see the bottom of the slide. There you go.
Hey, my face is there now. Okay, I didn't even know my face was hidden. Okay, you still get to see me. So basically, here are markets we went in where there was there was okay. it was very likely that the crash, if any, in these markets would have been softer, but promised a really big upswing. So take a look at these statistics. Atlanta was my first market I invested in starting in 2009. Like I said, I was in the penthouse of, it was on Peachtree, the main strip downtown. I think it was an Embassy. No. Anyways, who cares? It had the top suite. I was upstairs when the bottom hit. One day, 900 points, and it was a disaster. I was in the financial district. It was insane. But anyways, I went inside of Atlanta because it is a huge financial hub for the Midwest, and I knew that the governments were not just going to let the banks crumble. So it would be the fastest one to rebound. That was my thinking process back then. Now, I want to show you the most important slide. Take a look at these markets. This blew my mind when I saw this a couple of years ago. During the crisis of 2008, look at Pittsburgh. It never went down. It increased by 7% during the crashing time, 2006 and 2008. Look at Oklahoma City. That's where I bought, no, not Oklahoma City. It was Tulsa. But I had identified Tulsa as a great market to buy my first apartment complex. And that's where I bought Square. What was it? Brook Square. That was my first building, 50 units I had bought. Take a look at, I'm showing you Dallas here, but anywhere in Texas back then, okay? So the reason I'm showing you this is because not all markets are treated equally. Now, before I go into the economy, I want to be able to explain why you want to invest outside of your markets. If you really think about it, if you're investing in a market, can't be more Canadian, ad placement. If you are investing in your own backyard, number one, I so don't recommend it because you will be inclined by human nature, curiosity, to go there all the time, to see it, to inspect it, to do this, to do that. And I don't even care if you are a contractor or a home inspector. You have human emotions. Either it will force you to gravitate towards excitement and wanting to buy it because you can see all the numbers and the cash flow, or worse, you're going to be pushed away from it because you're going to see all this mold and all these renovations to do if you are doing a rehab, and you're going to walk away from a deal when you can't even really sum up the total cost of renovations. Third, you are you're bound by the economic activity of your local market, city, county, if it's in the US, and country, state, province, and country. So I'm the kind of person that would much prefer dictating my own timing. I would like to know, I have some capital to use, and I want to be able to cash flow, I would much rather pick the market that is prime in cash flow. And I'll show you exactly how to do that, okay? Today, that's our goal, how to pick the right markets. You may have fears. You may have, or even bad experiences. Unfortunately, I've had a lot of students with terrible experiences with mistrusting contractors, property managers. And that's why I opened my own construction company, to be able to help you guys, really help me figure it out so that I can then turn around and figure out the holes. Because I'll tell you, managing 50 people was like babysitting. My children are easier to keep track of than my workers in the construction world. And I'm not trying to say this in a terrible way, but oh my God, it was like insane. 5 to 6 a.m. was the worst time ever because I would have a slew of calls, and that's why I had to get a manager. I couldn't handle that anymore for reasons why they could not go to work today. And believe me, don't ask weekends, hungover and all. Oh my goodness, it was just terrible. And again, I'm not bashing anybody here. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just sharing my experiences. So getting back to it, how can you do that today? I used to do that. Well, I still do it, but I started in 2010 trying to buy real estate virtually. We were still using flip phones. And there was a point in time where we were laughing. I'll never replace my BlackBerry for an iPhone. Oh my goodness, I need the buttons to press, but the cameras were total crap. And now the technology, with what just happened in the pen, we've got 95-year-olds using Zoom and using, FaceTime or any other technology. So it's not even worth talking about. If you are investing in your own backyard, you are limiting yourself, period. And that's why it's important to understand how to pick the right markets, because you get to pick your timing. So let's talk about the economy. Now, I'm going to have to apologize, guys. When I decided to do this presentation, I think it was a week ago, I had all the content in my head. I've been talking about the economy. I read 50 books a year. That's my goal. Unfortunately, last year I read 43 books because some of those biographies from Dale Carnegie and the Rockefellers and the Medici family are thick. They're 1,300 pages, so sometimes it takes a little longer. But my point is I've been talking to my one-on-one consulting clients and businesses I consult about the economy and how it works for a couple years now. But one thing that's important to understand is knowing something and doing something is very different than teaching something. So unfortunately, all of you today are going to be my guinea pigs. It's the first time I present this content. For those of you that know me well, I'm terrible with PowerPoint slides anyways, because the content's always in my head because I'm just doing it every day. So spelling mistakes, please, I don't even bother. We'll get it proofed sometimes this week. I was still adjusting the PowerPoint 15 minutes ago, okay? So let's stop wasting time. Let's get into it. I'm going to do my best to explain it, but I had to write some notes because I don't know my slides yet. So let's see how it goes, okay? It's Saturday. I'll be honest with you. The main reason that we wanted to do this on a Saturday is because I had to get a babysitter, and it just so happens that 4 kids are sleeping at the grandparents tonight. So we got a quiet house for 24 hours. I've been homeschooling for 2 years now. So yeah, anyways. So the economy. First and foremost, important thing to understand is that the economy relies, grows, or shrinks based on transactions. Consumer spending of goods, any kind of product you can think of, from shoes to tennis rackets to skis to your bananas to your apples. Anything that you can touch and feel is a good or a product, okay? Second, services. Services are going to be a lawyer, an accountant, me, my courses, teachings, consulting, anything you can think of that is somebody doing something in order to help somebody, okay? Hopefully that's what their intentions are. And third, assets. So your assets are going to be anything in stocks, your commodities, your real estate, your gold, your silver, your Bitcoins nowadays, your NFTs. Please, we're going to talk about that a little bit. I'm trying not to make this too much focused on that, but I can tell you a lot of people want to know what the heck is going to happen, what is happening, and everybody seems to be an expert nowadays in this brand new thing called cryptocurrencies. I'll give you my 10 cents very quick. It is here to stay. It ain't going nowhere, but it is not a currency that we can use to go out and buy stuff right now. It is an asset like gold. It is an asset like stocks. That's it. That's all. And it is not proven, it has not gone through its bubble yet. If you think the last couple of weeks, it crashing almost 45% is the bubble, it ain't. It's far from the bubble. It's just going through its natural phase right now, figuring its place in our world. It is new. I'm going to show you there was a time where people thought investing in tulips, a live thing, was the best thing ever, paying upwards of $1 million for a tulip bulb. Okay. Now that disappeared and vanished because it didn't have a real intrinsic value that currencies and NFTs, I'm sorry, not currencies, cryptos and NFTs have. Okay. But, anyways, the economy revolves on transactions. The more you spend, the more the economy grows. And I'm going to show you that. Okay. And why. So, the more we spend, the more the economy grows. Oh, gosh. Sorry, guys. My screens and everything. It's hard to control. Okay. Nope. Wrong screen. Click. Move. Okay. So, again, it survives on transactions. Now, every transaction lives within its own market. And what I mean by that, I've mentioned it. There are markets for real estate. There are markets. I think I put them down here. There we go. There is markets for everything, guys. Anything you can think of. And this is a list of, 25 out of thousands and thousands. There is markets for everything. Anywhere there is a competitive edge, anywhere that you have competition, you create a market because more people can increase, decrease pricing, more spending on one person and the other. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Of course, our focus is real estate to be talking about today, but we need to understand how every piece falls together to make the smartest investments possible. Okay? So we get this part. Now, here we go. There are three main economic forces. And before I keep going here, I want everybody to know I did not invent this, okay? I took the majority of the training on the economy that I'm going to be talking about today from a gentleman that, if you have not heard of, you must know of. His name is Ray Dalio. He is a billionaire hedge fund manager that was the founder of Bridgewater. Absolutely loved his book. He's got, I believe, 3 out right now. I went through Principles. I went through The Economy. And I think there's another one, The New World Order, that's on my list this year. But my point is most of these trainings you can also find online. I prefer you listen through me because I'm going to expand on it a lot more, especially on the real estate side, okay? But I just want to give credit where credit is owed here. So, going back to it, there's 3 main forces that controls the economy. You've got the productivity and growth, you've got the short-term debt cycles, and you've got the long-term debt cycles. The 2 things I'm going to be focusing on most is going to be your productivity and growth. And then I'm going to talk about the short-term debt cycles. Those are the 2 main ones we really need to understand when it comes to predicting markets. Now, I want to make something very clear. I mentioned something in the beginning that, I was able to predict the 2008 crash. I was able to predict real estate doubling, tripling, and quadrupling. And I'm telling you now, cash flow will double, triple, and quadruple over the next 10 years. Okay. Just remember that. But what's the third? What I was going to talk about is I also screwed up on predictions a lot. I no longer make official predictions. I prepare myself as best as I can, knowing the data and information we have. because something the governments and the central banks, which I'll talk a lot about as well, are very good at is creating new tricks, creating new terms to stimulate the economy. But every time a new trick is created, a future problem is delayed and creates catastrophes, period. And that's where number 3 comes in, is the long-term debt cycles, okay? It'll all make sense as you follow me. But what I want to tell you is there's no crystal ball. There's none. You can predict within a 2 to 3 year time frame, but there's no, hey guys, November 21st, 2022, markets are going to crash, so get ready. You can't do that, okay? Because politicians' jobs are to keep everything looking pretty. They don't want a market to crash. They don't want, so they invent tricks to delay the inevitable to somebody else's problem, the next politician in line, right? So, again, let's keep going through this here, okay? So, the 3 main forces of the economy. What screen am I on now? Okay. So, productivity is something that is very important. And this one, I'm going to probably read my notes here because I can't remember what I wanted to say. Okay, actually, I'm not describing it here. So, there's productivity, which is basically the sum of all our efforts and production, okay? I'm going to keep going. I'll explain it to you in a few minutes. Oh, this is terrible here. Sorry, guys. I got so many screens. So basically, I think I'm going to put my notes here. Sorry, guys. Give me a quick second here. This 2-screen thing is not working well on me, Crystal. I've got so many screens. Okay. So, okay. Let's go back over here. So the 3 forces, sorry, guys. I told you, I warned you. First time teaching this. So you've got the productivity, which is our production, okay? I'll explain it a little more. Then we've got the short-term debt cycles. So productivity, as you see on this line here, is basically the growth of our economy. Best way to put it, okay? But that is pretty darn stable. There's not really big cycles because we keep producing, we keep going to work. Our incomes will be reflected. Our debts will be reflected, but we're still working, the majority of us, right? Even if the unemployment goes down a little bit, it doesn't affect it that much. But within the productivity curve, there are some cycles. And those are the ones I've always talked about in real estate. Every 5 to 8 years, there's a new cycle. And I'm going to explain to you exactly why. And then over a 75 to 100-year time frame, there's the huge long-term debt cycle. And that's where the shift in powers in the world happen. America was not the reserve currency of the world for very long. In 1950s and prior, the UK was controlling the world. It had the world reserve, but it had reigned for so long and accumulated so much debt that even though it had its little cycles inside, over time, it exploded and collapsed on itself. We can go back in time, which I'm going to show you, but you've heard about the French Revolution. We were the main power. I say we, I'm French. But they had the main power at one time, the Netherlands. And then we can go all the way back through, the Khan, how do you say Khan? Khan, I'm saying it right. The Khan dynasty. We can go back to the Romans. The Romans ruled the world, but fell into the inflation trap. And we'll talk about that. But so what I want you to understand is there's the normal productivity wave. We spend, we produce, supply and demand. There's the short-term debt cycles. I borrow, and in 5 years, I have to pay the money back. So I am borrowing for my future self, and the future self thinks he's going to make more money, but doesn't understand the market cycles, and there'll be less jobs to pay back the money, and I'm screwed. I got to sell my assets. Everybody sells the assets at the same time. My house just lost $150,000. I will explain. I'm talking fast. Don't worry about it. And then there's well, every time something crashes, the crash never goes as low as the previous crash. But there's a point in time where it gets so heavy on businesses, on governments, on individuals that the bottom collapses. Okay? So let's go back to transactions, because transactions are one of the most important things to the economy. Okay. So we as human beings want to buy goods and services. We need to survive. And most importantly, we're dumb. We just buy stupid shit. I am so sorry for the language, but we are dumb and we buy stupid shit, period. Okay. And it's just in our innate being. So every time, let's stick it to smart stuff we're buying, okay? So we've got our buyer. We're going to call her Jane. Jane wants to buy something from the store or a service or an accounting, but we're going to say she wants to buy bananas and water for her family. Simple. What does she do? She goes to the store to be able to, oh, look, I did something fancy here. Sorry, guys. To buy it from Tom. Where did Tom go here? Yeah, I suck at PowerPoints. So Tom has what she needs, okay? So Jane is going to buy it from Tom. Buyer buys from seller. And when they do this exchange, they're creating a transaction. Pretty simple. Don't need to explain much more on that, okay? So I have money. Tom has the goods, the services, or the asset I want to purchase. Now, what we really got to understand is that every time Jane makes a transaction to Tom, Tom now increases his income. Okay? Maybe not increase, but what I'm trying to say is anybody's purchase is, or transaction, we're going to stick to transaction. Anybody's transaction is someone's income. I know this sounds simplistic and very simple and easy. Please follow me because I am getting in deep very soon. Okay? But remember that, because now Tom, I'll stick to buyer here. I won't be creative on names. Buyer, who was the seller, he needs to eat too. He needs to purchase stuff as well. So Tom, with his new money, now turns around, and we'll stick to smart stuff. He also needs to eat, or he needs services, so he is going to spend it. And when he creates a transaction, it is someone else's income. Okay? So one's transaction is somebody else's income. That's simple. So I wasn't very creative. I did these slides myself. You'll probably notice. They're so ghetto. But anyways, he turns around and goes to a business and creates a new transaction. Okay? So there's now a buyer and a seller for a completely different product. And steadily goes up the economy. Because, actually, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'll explain that to you. But one takes their money, purchases goods. That good turns around, purchases from somebody else, and somebody else, and somebody else. Transactions create the economy. Period. The more we spend, the more the economy grows. If we stop spending, our incomes go down. And I'm making it very simple, but think of a business owner. If I own a store that's selling books and I have 5 employees, and all of a sudden I'm used to, 10 people coming to my bookstore every single day, and all of a sudden there's only 5 people a day recently. because less people are spending. What's the first thing I'm going to have to do? As a business owner, your biggest expense is payroll after taxes. So I have to let people go. And what happens? Incomes go down. Plain and simple. So this is how the economy works, through transactions. Okay? Now, here's an element we cannot forget about. There's this thing we call credit. If we lived in an all cash society, you would simply not see crashes. You would see slowdowns, but you wouldn't see ups and downs. And I'm going to explain that a little further here soon, okay? So let me find my notes here so that I don't get lost and talk too fast ahead of myself here. But credit can be used to purchase anything, okay? So let's keep on that exact topic, because credit is literally the biggest element of a transaction which drives the economy, okay? So statistically, I wrote the statistics, but I have so many in my head and I'm afraid to screw it up for you guys. I would double check the stats. But right now in North America, buyers are paying with credit around 70% of the time. Please don't take me for my word. Google, research it. I don't remember the stat and I don't even have the source here in front of me. But the credit purchases far outweigh cash purchases. And I'm going to show some real statistics I have very soon that'll just blow your mind, okay? But that's something you have to remember, is credit is used most often. And now credit, this is one of the things we have to most understand. Credit used by a buyer is cash in someone else's hands. So if, we'll stick to this example, buyer comes in with a credit card. Where's that money from the credit card? It's created out of thin air. We'll talk about that a little more, but credit is literally created out of thin air, because when buyer gives her money to seller, it's numbers on a piece of plastic that Bank of America fictitiously created because the client was credit worthy, okay? But the seller doesn't care if it's cash or credit. Sure, there's merchant fees, but we're not talking about that. Somebody's spending, whether it's cash or credit, automatically creates cash in the seller's hands. Period. Unless the seller would give a loan, but that's not our point, okay? The transaction immediately gets settled the moment it leaves from credit from the buyer into the seller's hand. It turns into cash. Why is that important? You will follow me here. Because then buyer will then turn around, use his or her credit to go ahead and conduct their transaction. So can you imagine doing this a couple trillion times per day? So we hear about the Fed printing money over and over and over again. It allows the lenders, I'm getting ahead of myself, but it allows the lenders to be able to create this fictitious money that gets settled into cash, gets settled into existence. Okay? Let's keep going. Again, I'm getting to somewhere here. So something that's extremely important to understand, and now this statistic is pre-pandemic levels, okay? I'm not even talking about pandemic numbers and how much they printed in the last 18 months. The stat's very simple. Add 40% to these numbers, okay? That's simple. But prior to, so let's say 2019, prior to the pandemic, the US economy was $50 trillion of money in circulation from credit and $3 trillion in cash. So what I mean by this is there's 50 trillion fake dollars out there and only 3 trillion real ones. Plain and simple. Keep that in mind, okay? So people that think that the economy is based out of money is completely out of whack and has a complete misunderstanding of how the economy works. So what is extremely important, I think this is the 17th time I say important here. The whole thing's important. Let's just assume that, okay? Loans, credits, anything that is paper money, not fiat currency. I'm not talking about fiat, sorry. I'm talking about anything that is credit or loans or anything like that. And money are treated 100% equally in an economy. So what I'm getting at is it doesn't matter if it's paper money that does the purchases to stimulate the economy or it's credit. The economy will continuously grow if transactions are conducted, period. Nowhere does it say the economy grows faster only on credit versus money. It's the same thing. Total credit purchases plus total money purchases equals total spending. That's the key element right there. So if we were to take the total spending and divide it by the quantity of goods, services, and assets sold, we get the unit price. Okay? I don't think that's a very important element, but that's the equation. Very simply, the amount spent by the amount of quantity, you get the price. That's how we get the GDP. That's how we get the value of our goods and services pricing, okay? So the economy survives on transactions. Now I'm going to go back to my top little layer here. I want to make sure to say this if you're just popping by the way, while I'm looking for my slides here. Please, any questions that pops out of your head, I need to know them, okay? No, I'm not answering them right now. I keep seeing the chats here. I've got 97 on my little bubble right there. Remember, I'm on a lot of different channels here. But ask them. Keep asking because I will go through them. I'm not in your shoes. I don't know what you want to know. I read so much. I have so much knowledge that I don't even realize I have. So some people may not understand a very important part, and I need to know that so that in the future, I can help you more. That's the only way I'll be able to learn how to teach it better, okay? So if we understand transactions and we understand credit, we immediately understand how the whole economy works, okay? So we've already broken down that there's millions of different markets. And when we put them all together, we create the economy. And that is how a country is judged, basically on a fiscal standpoint. Okay, it's the sum of every single market, from import and export to real estate to tuna to coffee to milk to cameras to whatever. Everything put together creates the economy. And that's how you and I get paid. That's how we have our quality of living and so on and so forth. And also, we have to understand, whoops, I just want to look at my notes there. If you add up the total spendings by the total of goods, services, and assets together from every single markets, you get the health of a country, okay? But that is just on the surface. What I'm teaching you today is how to dig even deeper to really understand what's going to happen to our economy. So, we've only been talking about people, But who are the biggest buyers out there? Who conducts the most amount of transactions and the highest level of transactions? So, three different elements: people like you and I, businesses, and governments. We all conduct transactions. And that's an important element because, again, they're not only conducting transactions on a cash basis, they're mostly conducting transactions on a credit basis. So, two very important things we need to really make a distinction with. You've got the central government and you've got the central banks. So I'm going to say central banks. I may say Federal Reserve or the Fed. That's what the US equivalent of the central bank is. In Canada, we have the Canadian Central Bank, Australia. Everybody's got their own central banks. And to put things in perspective, I think that's my next slide, anyways. The central governments, the central governments govern politics and everything, but it does not print money. It does not play with interest rates, nor does it play with inflation. It has nothing to do, okay? Now, you and I can both have a conversation that in the past 18 months, there's been a very, very severe convoluted message of what is happening because right now the Fed and the government are acting one and the same. I don't even want to talk about that because it won't help us really in our real estate investing. But it is very important to understand that there's been some, who cares? Let's stick to government's job is to maintain a budget without a deficit, create jobs, grow the economy by spending. Okay? It's supposed to spend by collecting taxes. That's how it's supposed to do. Of course, the government can borrow money as well. And who is the main person that lends money to the government? The central bank. Okay? The central bank's job is to control the flow of money within an economy. And it does this by controlling two very important things: interest rates and printing money. Now, this is where it gets very important to be able to follow this, okay? We've talked about an economy. With only cash would naturally grow at a slow and steady pace. And I have a few slides in explaining on this a little more, but it would simply just grow. But it would grow at a very slow pace. It would grow very slow, and it wouldn't create the middle class that we see today. The reason there's a middle class today is because in the 50s and 60s, credit became readily available to everyone. And that's what created the middle class in most developed countries. If you take a look at why did China go from being absolutely nobody on the economic scale of the world in 79 or 89 when they opened up commerce to the world? I believe it was 79. And then all of a sudden today will be overtaking America in GDP and in growth, because it finally opened up commerce, not only to the world, but within its own people, and gave people credit. Okay? So credit increases the middle class. And how does it increase? It allows people to spend stupid money, basically put. Okay? So let's dig into credit and how it really affects the economy. So again, as I said, if you really break it down, transactions that were all cash would have a nice and steady uprise, okay? Now, I'm going to go a little bit of I'm going to geek out on you guys, I guess you can say here, and flex my muscles when it comes to studying the economies.
Is yours still moving?
No. We are having technical difficulties. Give us one quick second. Do you see me on your computer?
I do now.
Do now. Hey, everybody, can I get a thumbs up if you still hear me? We just had a little blip on my screen. Do not. Oh, I'm seeing messages. Are we okay,
You're back
Crystal?
now.
You're
It's
back?
okay.
We're back? Okay, perfect. Thank you, guys. Thank you. So, what I was saying, I'm not sure when I cut out or not. Thank you, Crystal, for the heads up, because I would have talked to myself for quite a long time. Let me take a little sip of coffee. Would you mind bringing me a glass of water, please? With a little squirt. Thank you.
I don't think it cut out for everyone, but
It depends on the streams and the channels and everything. Okay, so I've been studying economies throughout the world for 33,000 years. Now, I say 33,000 years. Honestly, there was not much to talk about, but the shift between an agricultural to an industrial society, actually, from hunters and gatherers to an agricultural to an industrial to a technology world that we now live in, is very interesting. But that's not what I want to talk about today, because that would take days. What I want to break down is, first off, credit is nothing that's new, okay? Because our dollar, right, we have fiat currency today. Fiat currency is money that is absolutely worthless. Previous to 1971, and I'm talking about America here, sadly enough, I mean, I live in Canada right now, and I don't even know when this happened, but we don't do anything without following the US anyways. So in 1971, prior to 1971, a dollar would have a promise of gold in the bank. Okay? So, plus a time, 1,000 years, actually, the French in 1710 created the first paper money. Actually, it wasn't the first one, but it really made it popular. I think there was 5 other countries, Sweden, England, already had paper money. But paper money has always been the promise that the bank is holding gold or silver or something of value in exchange for the paper. Okay? So prior to 1971, your paper that you had came with a promise that if you went to the bank, you could get your gold or your money, because that had a real intrinsic value. But in 1971, they killed it. Okay? It's not even the point of my conversation here, but what I was going to get to is, can you imagine back in Roman times, Babylonian times, back in these times over here, if you wanted to buy a piece of land, you would have to bring, I think I have a picture of that, you would literally have to bring right here, tons, thank you so much, tons and tons and tons and tons of wheelbarrows full of gold to make a purchase. So somebody once said, actually it was the Medicis, I believe, in the 1400s, that said, okay, listen, instead of having to wheelbarrow tons and tons and tons of gold or silver, why don't I give you a piece of paper that says I am holding that 10,000 pounds of gold, and this paper proves it because it's stamped from the bank. Okay, now I'm really making it super simplistic here, but that's the idea behind it. So paper money became a thing, but up until 1971, that piece of paper would say it's because there's gold or silver in a bank somewhere. Okay, but let's keep going here. So I don't want to talk about I want to talk about anything starting from year 0. Okay, so let's start with the Romans. The Romans are the biggest civilization, one of the biggest ones that we know. They used to rule pretty much all of Europe, and they went through an entire collapse exactly like I'm going to be describing to you. And in short, very simply put, they implemented governments, they implemented taxes, they were the first to dilute their currency and the first to go through hyperinflation. Now, they didn't print money. What they would do, just for your knowledge, is instead of having 100% of silver, they would throw in some nickel with 75% silver. All the way down to 100 years later, there was probably, not probably, I think there was less than 5%. I had a slide on that, but who cares? It's not even the point here. But they managed to dilute the silver coin that you would get would only have less than 5% of actual silver in it. So that's how they collapsed their entire empire, okay? Up amongst many other things. Now, there was many, and here we're talking about credit, okay? But there were many times where credit was banned. It was seen as a terrible thing. The church put limits on it. What I want to get to is the discovery age in the 1500s, when Spain, when Italy, when England, when France, when Portugal were all huge, massive empires in Europe. They needed credit to be able to expand their explorations. And this becomes very important because it's the real first signs of bubbles being created in Netherlands. I'm so sorry, in Netherlands, because they were the biggest by far, the Dutch. But they were the first ever to really create bubbles and crashes and created greed all out of credit. Okay. The term millionaire actually was invented in the 1700s in France because everybody was making money. So, guess what? Everybody started buying stocks. And guess what happened? Which led to the revolution. So, the Medici family, I actually didn't know I put a slide on that, but in the 1400s, the Medici Bank was the first family to actually say, why don't we open a bunch of branches and allow merchants? Because you got to remember, back in these days, exploration, cities and civilization survived off of merchants, right? So, salt or sugar, nowhere in Europe can you get sugar. They would go to Africa, they would go to Asia to get spices, they would go to wherever, right? Anyways, the Medici family knew this from Italy, and they are the first ones that we can actually track back to where they had multiple branches that actually became nationalized, where they could take paper. A merchant could take paper instead of tons of gold, bring it to the bank, and get their gold if they wanted it. Okay. So they're very important inside of the history of credit because essentially they started diluting. I'm not there yet. Sorry, I'm talking too ahead of myself here. Here are some bullet points. I'm sorry, like I said, I couldn't really get the whole presentation ready for this morning, but I said, hey, let's still do it anyways. The Dutch Empire from Netherlands, they were by far the most innovative not dynasty, royalty, powerhouse, okay, that was ever created because they first started the biggest corporation, or actually a corporation period, okay? They created the first stock exchange, they established the first central bank, but more importantly, they were the first one to readily make a credit readily available to the general public. So they're the first ones to have offered companies and stocks because people, and they're the first ones to really have experienced greed on a mass scale. And it's very important to know this because of the switch in power, because the credit was becoming too readily available, it collapsed the entire empire. Okay. But if we follow through history, and I don't want to bore you guys too much, but they're very important details. That crashes are not new. Cycles aren't new. Whether it was back in the Babylonian times or today in 2022, people are people. If we have access to credit, we will spend it on stupid stuff. We will use it for investments, which create the bubbles. So take a look at this over here. This in 1717, just to give you an idea, okay? Look at this. This is the stocks of the Mississippi Company, I believe it was called. It was actually a French word, but it just generalized itself into the Mississippi Company. These are the stocks of the Mississippi Company, one of the only publicly traded companies back then in France. And in 1717, John Law, very interesting person, he screwed up the French economy and screwed up the English economy back then. But he was the first one to open a central bank in France, offer a centralized place to be able to borrow money, to spend, and so on and so forth. He established it around I think first nationalized over here, around 1718. Look at what happened to the stock market the moment people put their hands on credit. And essentially, guys, a bubble is created when people invest with borrowed money. That's simple. The bubble pops when a collective group of individuals all realize that, holy shit, whatever my investment or my asset is not worth what they're saying it's worth. And then everybody sells, bottom collapses, right? Human behavior. So again, look at the introduction in credit in France. I believe I have the English one. Look at the introduction at the same time, all created by the same person, didn't invent the credit, but made it readily available. Look at what happened. Money gets introduced, everything goes skyrocketing and crashes because you are borrowing from your future self, which I will show you in very shortly here. Okay, so here's where it gets important when it comes over to North America. So England was the very first one to start really implementing rules, regulations, maximum interest rates, because remember, England was the powerhouse. It took it away from in the Dutch and English War in the 1600s, I believe. Don't quote me here, but the English took the world power from Netherlands, from the Dutch, and then they were the powerhouse till about 1950s. And they created all these rules, the governments, and so on and so forth that we now know in North America. But here's where it gets very interesting. I'm going to skip a bunch of this, okay, because this is an Equifax report, which really says how we started doing it and everything. Here's where it gets really important. Henry Ford and GM changed the world when it comes to credit. Because in the Model T time, 1908, it was very hard. Henry Ford wanted to sell a vehicle to everyone. And I believe, I read his book this year, I believe they were selling for about $850 to $900 back in early 1900s. Too many numbers in my head, doesn't matter. But people still didn't have that cash. So they would offer payment plans. And GM in 1919 is the one that changed it all. Pay me in installments. And that's why you have the roaring 20s, guys. Credit then became available for everything. Housing, vacuums. Back then, it wasn't really the banks that were doing the lending, but it was the merchants, the stores that said, you want a vacuum? Make me 12 payments of $5 and you will have your vacuum. So credit became available. I think I put aside, so the roaring 20s, okay? I have slides. I've got so many slides with me here right now, but that actually show the proper wave. That you see the economy, and then kaplang, it goes up. Roaring 20s exploded because credit became readily available to almost anybody. But what happened in 1929? Credit plays a huge role in economic cycles. So in the 30s, so look at this. 2/3 of people were buying off of credit, and that's only cars, okay? So everybody started purchasing because we could delay the purchase. Here's the slide. I knew I put it in. So here's an accumulation of over 20 recessions. I think there's 27 recessions since 1890 in America, all US. I have real estate prices are in red, but look in blue behind. That's stock markets, okay? I have the reasoning here, but to be honest, I don't even know if it really is sized properly because, I mean, I just seen two logos here isn't good. I may have shrunk it and it messed up the numbers. But my point is, the moment credit became available in America to the general masses after First World War, a Great Depression was created. And that is, after the World War I. Great Depression was created because people over borrowed and thought the economy will always be going up. Did not anticipate that there's a retraction period when it comes to credit. Okay. So, I have a question and I need water anyways.
Somebody has an opinion question. They're asking their opinion, and I feel like that might be interesting.
Let's do it. Do you want to speak a little louder?
So with China, quote, recently opening up credit, are you saying it will have a significant crash at some point?
I don't want to talk too much about China right now. China is going through an extremely terrible time with at the beginning of the presentation. Thank you for your question. Who do we know? I can't see the names for some reason. It says Facebook, YouTube user. But anyway, so about China, okay? If you look at Ray Dalio, who I was talking about earlier, he's a strong believer in China, while you have mega hedge fund billionaires that are totally against the Chinese economy. They've shut down their rules. They've been shutting down a lot of the tech companies in China within itself. But I don't even want to talk about that. So yes, if you look at the economy of China, I was in Toronto. That would have been 3-4 years ago with Jack Ma. And we were talking about the Chinese economy, and it is growing at a faster pace than we can ever imagine. So fast. And it's going to outproduce, if it hasn't in the last 12 months, the economy of America and anybody else in the world by far. But it is in such deep problems right now because its governments is also very tightly connected, whether I don't even know if it could be illegal in China, but they're so tightly connected. You take a look at the real estate defaults right now that are going to be tied in with the government and every other corporation there is. So they are currently going through a massive destruction. I don't want to say destruction, but they're really going through, I've got the word here. I'm sorry. I call it a depression, but it's far from a depression already. But they're definitely, where's my mouse? There it is. Okay, sorry. I'm terribly sorry. I'm looking for a word here. For some reason, it's slipping my tongue. But they are going deleveraging. Thank you. Deleveraging is the word I was looking for. They're going through a massive deleveraging right now. They're restructuring all the debts of the mega corporations because it is tightly connected to the governments. So the answer is China will be going through a massive recession. Absolutely. How deep, we don't know. And how are they going to get out of it is an even more important question. Something I'm not going to be talking about in today's presentation, but very important to know. On top of just reading economies, cycles, so I'm sharing 3 main important points today. We said the productivity and growth, the short-term cycles, and the long-term cycles. But one of the things I decided not to talk about because I didn't have time to put it in my slides is the demographic cliff. I'm not going to play my slides here and show you the straight line, but if you look at productivity growth, it continuously goes up, as I mentioned. But one thing it does not show and take into account is the average age of the population. Because China's a couple years ahead of us on baby boomers, they're not baby boomers over there, but their oldest people are literally older than us. And the fact that they've only been allowed to have one child per person for how many years now? The problem they've created is what happened in Japan since the 90s crash. I'm getting off topic, but this is all very important data here, guys, okay? So write these notes down and look it up for yourself. But Japan went through a massive depression, 89 and 90. They went through such a huge boom, all through credit and printed money. The economy collapsed. Until this day, they call it the last decade. It's almost the last 2 decades now, 3 decades. There's been very little growth in Japan. Why? Because they as well had an older demographic, an older average age. And the millennials that we would call here in North America that they had was way further back. So there's nobody to pick up the slack, nobody else to stimulate the economy. There's not enough people. Our average peak spending time is age 42. So the average North American spends the most amount of money when they're 42 years old, and then they spend less and less and less. They've paid out their house, they stop working as much, so on and so forth. There's millions of different reasons. But the gap in China is very similar to Japan, where the bubble popped in the 90s. North America went right back up. But, when we hit rock bottom, I think it was 2012 to 2018, we surpassed 2008 crash. So in 10 years, because we have a younger demographic that is getting older and older now. But China and Japan does not. So that's something that's very interesting. If you're looking at emerging markets, I would be more tempted to suggest going to India for investment purposes rather than China, one, politics, and so on and so forth. But India still misses some very key ingredients that we're talking about right now. Credit. Moody's has, some people love him, some people hate him, but he's not creating and growing the economy as it should. He's taking the slow and steady pace instead of what China did, which is credit for everybody, which created the middle class. So let's back up. Let's go back. Thank you for your question. I don't even know if I really answered it, but they're in for a whole whack of crap as well. That's basically what I'm getting to, okay? Some people tell you they're going to be the new world order. They're getting more powerful. They don't have, in my opinion, which really doesn't mean anything, but from the research I've put together throughout the last decade, the problem is China will not have the proper population to sustain its current growth. So it will have a negative retracting economy, and for the first time in a long time, start going down. But again, they got a lot of tricks up their sleeve. Their goal is to be the world dominating power in 2035, and they're still kicking butt. So it's one of those, okay? But let's get back into where we are right now. Thank you for your question. Where we are right now, a very important last point is the invention of the credit card in 1958. That's where you start seeing things. I think I put a slide after here. Yeah, take a look at this. Okay, so important for North America, as I mentioned, 1920s, we started issuing credit. Corporations would do it. I know the Discover card came in before. Was it Amex? Who cares? In 1958, the big significant move was the credit card did not need to be paid immediately, because anything prior to 1958, you would have a credit card or the store would issue you credit, but it was a net 30 deal, meaning they had to pay by the end of the month in full. In 1958, Bank of America said, why don't we just carry the balance? Make sure they pay us a minimum and let them go. We're making more money anyways. So check out this slide. Two very important things. Let's stick to the last slide. Don't look on the left, look on the right. Take a look at when credit cards starting becoming popular. So look at 1960. Okay, so we said 1958. Now remember, in any new innovation, you've got the early adapters, you've got, the people start jumping in the bell curve, and then everybody starts jumping in. So 1960s is the introduction of the credit card, and look at how the debt accumulation starts skyrocketing. So to put things in perspective, everybody says the subprime crisis or the 2008 financial crisis was created by subprime. And I've said this for over 2 decades. The subprime, actually not 2 decades, 15 years. The subprime crisis is not a subprime crisis. What it was literally a giving too much money to people crisis. So I want you to remember that, because if you look at the slide on the left, the bottom crashed in 2008 because household debt was over $12 trillion. It went back down, but not that much. And look at what we are today. 15 trillion in debt. I don't even want to talk about America. You can go to the worlddebtclock.org, I think it's called, and you'll just be baffled. But the debt levels are higher today than what they were back in 2008, just to put things in perspective. Okay, but that's just one little tiny ingredient. So let's bring it back to today. So I promise we're getting to a point. I can't believe the numbers are actually still increasing rather than decreasing. I would be bored by this, but it's all really good data. I'm loving it. So going back to it. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch up on my slide here, guys.
I distracted you with China. We distracted you.
Yeah, I got distracted exactly with China. Now you're talking about world emerging markets, which is something that I've been studying very recently. So very interesting. Okay, so now let's go back to our buyer and seller. So to put things back into where we were and leading us to the conclusion of what we want to do, how do we pick real estate markets? We have to look at transactions. And we have to remember that it's not only buyers and sellers that are using credit to conduct transactions. We are also, companies are doing it and governments, okay? Now, let's talk about banks and lenders. Banks are in the business of making money. I mean, here in Canada, the most profitable companies still to this day is Royal Bank of Canada. Its profits keep skyrocketing because it's issuing more debt, and the more debt it makes, it charges interest. So we all know how debt works. Is we go to the bank, and if we are credit worthy, the bank will look at us, will look at our assets and say, of course, Steve, I want to give you money. Which you must pay back at a future date in time. So remember that. We are promising that we will pay back in a future date. So on goes the borrowing of credit. Banks like making money. It's an advantage for them, okay? I'm going to do something, guys. I'm getting distracted. I hope you guys don't mind. I'm just going to open up my slides like this and just do it the very ghetto way because I wrote notes and there's so many details that I'm missing for you guys, and I don't want to miss anything. So I'm just going to do it my way here. So, do we still go see it properly, Crystal?
Yeah, we see it just fine.
And don't laugh at my writing here, okay? These are my bullet points. No, I can't spell. Don't tell my children. So, now, what dictates how much people borrow are going to be our interest rates, okay? So, when interest rates are low, what do people do? They borrow more. Why? Because we want to go and buy stupid stuff. When interest rates are high, we then stop borrowing and then the economy retracts. Now, what I want to show you guys here is the correlation of people borrowing with the interest rates. So I don't know the age demographic of the people that we have on the line, but if you remember the 1980s, I was a baby, I was young, so I don't remember, but still to this day, I'll remember my parents telling me our first house, we purchased it at an 18% interest rate. And I believe the interest rates went up to 23 and 24%. That is something that is extremely important to remember. Why were interest rates so high? Okay, because I'll break it down in a few minutes here how you control an economy or try to, anyways. So, over here, if we look at interest rates in 1981, and these numbers aren't accurate because if I remember that they went up a lot more than 15.8. I believe it came close to 20%, okay? But if you look at 20% and what the total debt was back in the 80s, this is total public debt of America. Now look at what happens the moment the interest rates go down. Public debt goes through the roof. When there is more money readily available, people conduct more transactions. So the governments are more apt, the central banks are more apt to give money at a cheaper rate to be able to encourage spending. Okay? So if we keep going down the road, credit is the biggest driver of an economy. Now, remember earlier I said the most important aspect of an economy are transactions, when in fact, it's the credit that supports the transactions. What do you use to purchase your items? Are you using mostly credit or are you using mostly cash? 70% of the time, people are using credit. Now, if you're fiscally responsible, you get your points and then you pay it back with cash. But we don't live in a fiscal responsible averaged person, okay? World. In the world, period. We spend money on stupid things we don't need versus investing in ourselves and investing in assets, okay? So, really important again. It's sorry guys, the slides are kind of messy when I'm not in the presentation mode here, but if we lived in an all-cash society, the markets would always be steady. But because we have credit, it creates the cycles, okay? Now, to remember that one person's transactions is somebody else's income. And the more you spend, the more somebody else is making because it supply and demand, okay? So just to bring it back, buyer, I said spender, the buyer spends to buy goods, services, or assets. That is now my income. But I need to turn around and spend that income to buy more stuff. So then I go up and I buy it from this blonde gentleman here. What happens to his income? The more people that are buying from this person, the more his or her income goes up. The more I can pay my employees, the more I can hire people, the more I can get more products for the masses. Okay. So you can see how having more money into an economy raises things. The more people start spending, the more they accumulate assets, the more they are credit worthy, and the interest rates are at a nice, steady, low level. Okay. So, very, I got to stop saying very important. The whole darn thing is important. But more credit available is directly responsible for more income being made out in the markets. Think about it in today's world. Who has had the terrible experience of trying to hire a contractor during the pandemic over the last 2 years? Who has been told you can't fix your pool because the supply chain is messed up? Who has not been able to get car parts? Who has not? It all has to do with having too much money in the economy. It's not because a ship was blocking the canal for a week. It's because more people are demanding products, services, and assets. Do I need to mention that during a pandemic, real estate prices are not supposed to be going up? The economy is not supposed to be thriving when everybody is at home not working, okay? So, if you increase the amount of capital, more importantly, the amount of credit available to people, companies, and governments, the more we raise somebody's income. Okay, we'll stick to that for now still. And the sum of that creates the economy. I'm turning a little in circles here, guys. I'm sorry. I'm repeating a lot just to make sure we're all following. But what I'm trying to get to is credit creates cycles. That's the thing we need to understand. Now, I want to explain to you why, because a lot of people don't seem to grasp, well, why would credit create a problem in the future? And it's very, very simple, okay? In a transaction, you are buying something, okay? In order to get whatever you're looking for, you have to give cash or credit. And how much you get paid in a world of only cash depends on your production. So what I'm saying here, okay? Let me say this again. In a world of only cash, the only way to increase your income is by producing more. Work harder, make more products, get more clients, but that's it. So that I can have more money to turn around and purchase more things. It would work. And some economies have thrived on that. But in the end, it's a slow growth. I'll leave it at that again. Now, in the world that we live in, we know that the top 3%, maybe 7%, are the people that acquire everybody that's here, period. You are here with me because you're not a lazy individual that has the victim mentality of not wanting to take action. You're going to be in the top percentile because you've accumulated knowledge and you're an action taker. That's your entrepreneurs, business owners, high-paid individuals that went to school for 7, 8, 9 years in universities like doctors, so on and so forth. The hard worker will take the cream off the crop, okay? Then you've got the average person. Your average person, And then we have the lower class. I hate using that word, but unfortunately in the economics, that's what we call. They're the individuals that don't produce more, don't work harder, that the governments have to sustain. But that's an important thing to remember is you'll always have different classes. I mean, we all have the exact same opportunities. Some people take it, push through, are resilient, and win. Some people see the opportunities and complain and bitch that it's not possible. It's that simple, even though we all have the same opportunities, okay? Now, because we introduce credit, sorry, getting a little dry. Because we introduce credit, it creates the vicious cycles. So let me explain why. What happens, and I don't even think this is the slides. I think I'm going to start free flowing, guys, because my slides are really interrupting with my teaching here. But what happens if you take a look at this slide right here is, actually, I'm going to put you to this slide here. When you're borrowing money, what you're essentially doing is borrowing from your future self. So every single time you borrow money and you use it, let's say it's a line of credit, you are automatically creating a future date, the maturity date, where you will have to spend less money than you earn to pay down your debts. But when you are spending it in the beginning, okay, so let's go here. At the bottom of a cycle, credit is available, income slowly increase, you have money to spend and spend and spend and spend. So what happens to the economy? It goes up, it goes up, it goes up, and it goes up. But there comes a point in time your future self has to pay that debt down. And the moment you have to pay that debt down, you can no longer spend more than you earn because your credit is tapped. So you now have to take the money you were going to use to buy it on stupid stuff and start putting it on your loans. So the moment you start paying down your debt, what happens to your consumption? You slowly stop spending. I've used this example in real estate for years and years. You have a homeowner, you know, me and Crystal, we own a house, and we've been borrowing and borrowing because everything is going so well. It's fantastic. But there's a point in time where interest rates are going to start going up, which I'll talk about very soon. And I no longer can afford to spend it on stupid stuff. So I have to limit buying the latest and greatest tool or the bigger TV, sound system, nicer car. I probably have to stop spending, getting somebody to cut my lawn, and I probably have to do it myself. I have to stop spending because my debt burden is right here. And because the economy relies on transactions, if I stop giving money to the guy that cuts my lawn, his income goes down. If his income goes down, he may not buy brand new skates for his sons and daughter that plays hockey. They're going to have to switch it up between each other, and the tallest one's going to have to curl his toes because daddy don't got the money to buy new skates. Well, if I'm not buying new skates, Dick's Sporting Goods, the biggest chain, I believe, in sporting goods in the US, has less customers in their store. Less customers in their store, income goes down. I have to fire people. Unemployed individuals then have to rely on the government for handouts, which I'll address in a minute here. But do you see what I'm saying? Transactions rule the economy. The more we spend, the more it booms, the more it goes up. But we also have to remember, every time we take out credit, we are planning ahead of time of having to spend less in the near future because that debt needs to be paid off. Period. And it's a vicious, self-fulfilling prophecy that continuously brings the economy to a halt and starts dipping down. And very important to remember, that's not just people. It is people, businesses, and governments. Super important, okay? And again, look at this graph here, folks. Real estate in every single market is cyclical, just like the 4 seasons we have in Canada. It is cyclical like the life expectancy of a human being. It is cyclical like the cheap dishwashers you pay $2,000 for and they always freaking break. Kids aren't here for me to tell them to rinse their garbage off their plates first. But my point is it is cyclical. And it can be predicted with a level of precision that gives you 1 to 3 year window to plan it out. Because everybody that borrowed during the boom will have to pay that back. And being forced to pay it back cuts down their spendings at that point in time. Why can't they go out and borrow more money? Because when you've hit a ceiling and you've collateralized all of your assets already, the banks will look at you like a piece of garbage. They don't want to lend you more money because you are becoming a very high risk. What happens if, again, I'm not following my slides here, but I promise it's a lot better than if I were. What happens if the banks are no longer able to make money? I can't find the slides. I'll just keep talking. Banks are in the business of lending money. But what happens when you're in an economy where there's $15 trillion, $15 trillion of household debt in America? Banks will come to a point where they can no longer lend money. And if they cannot lend money, what will happen to the economy? It comes at a screeching halt. And that right there is what happened in 2008, when the debt ceiling was just over $12 trillion at that time. We called it a credit crisis. It's not that there was not money in the economy. There was no one credit worthy of getting money. I promise, in 2010, everybody would say it's impossible to get a loan. I was buying apartment complexes like gangbusters, and lenders were more than happy to give to a French Canadian dude that's coming into America because they had nobody to lend to. And that is the real credit crisis. Now, they called it the subprime crisis. It wasn't because of subprime. Real estate was over leveraged, correct? Created a bubble because people were borrowing 100% financed. But in the end, the economy stopped working because interest rates went up on the big balloon loans that they were lending. People couldn't pay it back. They stopped spending. Lenders got stuck with toxic debt, put everything at a halt. So let's talk about what is the government's job in a situation like this. So I want to make sure everybody understands. that borrowing and spending today, and I'm not giving you a lesson right now. I want you to know that I love spending money and I love my toys and I love my stuff. Don't get me wrong. I invest first, blah blah blah. I'm not here to give you a lesson. I'm here to teach you what happens in an economy. Humans are stupid. I am sorry to tell you that. We are idiots. We are creatures of habits. How many have already lost their bets or their promise to themselves of their New Year's resolution? I mean, what are we? January 22nd today. We're already past the 2 weeks. We want the best, but we can't create the self-discipline to follow through. Now, I'm not saying me, you. I'm just saying the population in general. And the bigger problem is that current self does not believe or want to admit that I'll be making less money in the future. We all want to tell ourselves that, okay, I'm borrowing money today and it won't be this way in 5 years because I'm going to be making more money. But in reality, that's not how the economy works. Incomes go down when spending goes down. Spending goes down because the debt level's too high. When the debt level's too high, people can't borrow anymore, and they must cut their spendings in order to pay down their debts. Period. Okay? So, what are the tools at the disposal of the central bank? I don't want to say government. I want to say central banks. Actually, let me show you this very quickly. Everything I'm showing you, and I'm going to break this down very soon. I hope so. Holy crap! How long? I knew this would have been a long one. I can't believe you guys. Thank you so much for sticking. Okay, and yes, there's a lot of info. PowerPoints. I'll share everything with you. Don't worry about it. Make sure, though, to go sign up to onepropertychallenge.com to make sure that I can share all of this with you. Okay, so let's talk about the levers that the central bank has, because I said earlier, their goal is to make sure the economy never crashes. It's not like somebody says, let's crash this economy in this country. No, everybody's looking for the perfect solution. They have two tools at their disposal, okay? So the central bank has the option of playing with interest rates. And tool number two, of I keep going like this, making it rain, but printing money. Those are their two options. So the first one is interest rates. I said earlier, people borrow more when interest rates are low, okay? So if we take a look at this slide here, so this is inflation. We've heard that term a lot over the past couple of weeks, I'd say over the past couple of months, really, because we all knew the US is printing, Canada is printing, Australia, the world is printing so much money right now that it is going to increase inflation. US went up about 7%, or actually went 7% on the dot. Canada, okay, US says they went up 7%. Canada says and went up 4.8%, and so on and so forth. And poor Turkey is going through the worst inflation ever right now. It's going through hyperinflation as we speak. But the point is that we need to be able to control inflation. Inflation is the price of your goods going up, and everyone's felt it over the past year. If we take a look at here, I found this online here. Meat has gone up 24%. Hotels, I wouldn't know. I haven't been able to travel. I'm still in lockdown here where I live. But travel industry has gone up 26%. Gas, we've all seen that going up. Appliances, used car market, rental cars, furniture, anything has gone up through the roof. The math equation that they're using says 7%. I call bullshit on it. It is what it is. But let me explain why inflation is going through the roof. To be able to balance an economy, you have to play a very fine game of playing with interest rates, because you want to be able to keep the interest rates low, to be able to encourage borrowing so that I can spend and stimulate the economy. But when the interest rates are low for too long, it has detrimental effects on the rest of the economy. And that's where I want to bring you back to what happened back in I think it was, 1982. I showed you a slide earlier when interest rates in the 80s went up dramatically close to 20%. And the reason that had happened was because inflation was going through the roof. Why do we not want inflation? Inflation is terrible because we only have, I wish I had a paper bill in front of me, but our paper is worth nothing anymore. Since 1971, it's not like I can go to the bank and get my gold or my silver. That piece of paper is worthless. So if that piece of paper is worthless, inflation just means that it gets devalued even more. So if I make $100,000 per year, but the cost of goods went up 7%, I'm essentially making $93,000. I am losing. Now, if you're smart, you would have done what I did and take on as much debt as possible, because last year, my debt on my mortgages went down 7% without doing anything because the inflation paid down my debt. Different topic. What I'm getting to here is to make sure inflation does not get hyperinflation. What hyperinflation does, we've heard about what happened in Germany, right? Before Hitler took power, there was such hyperinflation. One day a loaf of bread was $1, the next day it's $10, the day after it's $1,000, the following is 10,000, 100,000. I have to buy my loaf of bread with wheelbarrows. Look at what happened to Zimbabwe. There's trillion-dollar bills that children in school are drawing on because that bill is worth less than buying paper. Oh, my printer moved. Buying paper for my printer. Inflation devaluizes your purchasing power, and it is detrimental to a country, because why would I, if I was China, why would I want to buy government bonds? Why would I want to buy debt with a promise to repay in America if I know their money is now worthless? So one of the most important jobs of the central bank is to ensure that inflation does not go through the roof. And how they do that is by controlling the supply of money in an economy. Why has inflation gone up 7%? It's because the US printed so much money, an incredible amount of money in the last 18 months. So that being said, let's go back to 1982. Volcker, very smart man. He said, if I have to go through inflation, at that time it was, I'm sorry, I'm looking here, actually a little higher. I think it was 9 or 10% inflation in 1982. He said we need to immediately put a halt on borrowing money. And how do you do that? Increase the interest rate. If America had somebody competent, I didn't want to get attacky. I'm trying to be neutral. Let's back up 30 seconds. If America was ran by me, no, I'm joking. But what they should have done after the 2008 crisis is increase the interest rates and stop printing money as much as they did. I don't have those things here, but essentially all America did is prolonged the pain by not increasing interest rates. And with the pandemic right now, I would have never thought in 2022, I would have said right now, we would have all thought that was going to be done. But with the pandemic, they printed so much money and kept the interest rates low, they're out of tools to be able to save the economy. Okay. So let me not get ahead of myself. If we look at what Volcker did, he raised the interest rate through the roof to be able to avoid what happened. Take a look at these here. I'll move them up for you. Germany, between 1922 and 23, had a daily inflation of 21%. 21% daily. And this is compounded, guys. So the loaf of bread that was $1 a week ago is now $1,000. Could you imagine? And again, Greece, Hungary, China, Zimbabwe is one of the worst. Yugoslavia, Venezuela, we've heard about that a couple years ago. And now today we've got Turkey, we've got a few other countries that are going through the same thing. And it is very dangerous because nobody wants to touch their currency on a global scale. And we live in a globalized society. Okay. So, as we said, central banks can control the economy by playing with interest rates. Now, what I want to do is actually forward over to the long-term debt cycles, because this is where we are today. If you want to be able to stimulate an economy, you have to lower interest rates. But what do you do when the interest rates are already at zero? Now, I know if you're in Canada, we had I don't even know his name, but our central bank said the interest rates will probably skyrocket upwards to almost 6% in the next 12 months. Smart move. We have to be able to control inflation, to be able to control the economy. But that has a detrimental effect. What happened in 82 or sorry, 79? And look at the economy, it just crashes. When you raise interest rates, the economies will crash. Okay. So we want to be able to make sure that that also doesn't happen. So you got to control it. So if your interest rates are already at zero and you're on the verge of going down, what's your last resource as a government? Printing money. That's the big challenge. So if we go to our second option, it's about printing money to be able to save the economy. Now, I want to, sorry guys, I'm a little all over the place here, but I hope you guys are still kind of following where I'm getting to. But one thing that I want to talk about is the creation of bubbles. And I really wanted to address that because I am in the belief, like many economics right now, that we are in an everything bubble. I mentioned earlier that the fact that the stock market it keeps decreasing lately for good reason, but the fact that the stock market was at an all-time high, real estate at an all-time high, any kind of asset you can fathom were an all-time high during a pandemic. You have to step back and think, what was the major boom created by? Because we know that bubbles are created by speculation. Everybody wants a piece of the action. Educated on the topic or not, they'll use borrowed money to invest in assets and see the prices go up and up and up. But there always comes a time where a collective group of people get together and says, is it really possible that such and such stock could be worth X amount of price? Is it really possible that in Vancouver, Canada, The average price of homes, I can't even keep up, is $1.2 million now. How can somebody coming out of college afford a home? Yeah, but Steve, it's foreign nationals. Wait till the government actually grows balls. I'm terribly sorry. But wait till something drastic happens and stops that from fueling prices. Bubbles are meant to pop. Speculations. If the asset you own does not have intrinsic value or does not meet the expectations, it will implode on itself. So when you're investing in stocks, you got to look at what are the multiples of earnings? What is its potential growth? And is it possible that if it's trading at 1,500 times more than its current earnings, it could pop? Look at the dot-com bubble. Why did it pop? Because people realized, holy cripes, just because it has a stevemartel.com, it doesn't mean it's going to become a success. Stocks or companies have to pay back their stockholders. So everybody that's in stocks right now really needs to look at, what is my portfolio? Am I investing on hype because my neighbor and my barber said it was a good investment? Or am I investing with good sounding substance? Because bubbles will always pop. I can show you thousands of years. Here's your tulip mania. People in 1600s, the Dutch thought that tulips was the greatest investment in the world. Yes, I am talking about tulips that are outside in our gardens in springtime if you're in a four-season country. They thought, so a tulip back in early 1630s was worth the regular price, $1, right? They didn't use dollars, but just to put things in perspective, by middle of 1636, people thought they were worth upwards of $1 million in today's money. I think the actual highest one was $750,000 for a tulip because it had special colors, only to find out now, hundreds of years later, it was just a disease that swept through a couple tulips. Okay? Everybody thought that investing in the Mississippi Company, who was exploring new lands, going to Mississippi and Louisiana to extract gold, thought they would be millionaires. And everybody at one point said, I don't think there's real value in it, because he always comes back empty-handed with only promises. This John Law guy, right? In England, I keep seeing this slide everywhere. I guess Newton, right? Isaac Newton was a big investor in the South Sea Shipping Company, because everywhere when you see South Sea Shipping Company chart, it has Newton's name on it. But anyways, my point is that everybody thought, I mean, look at Isaac Newton. How many things did he invented? We looked it up the other day. Not only gravity, but the law of motion.
He didn't invent gravity, but yes.
He invented gravity, guys. Anyways, discovered the law of motion and so on and so forth. But my point is, you think he was a smart man, and he still got stuck in the hype. If you look at it here, he invested a little bit before it exploded. Newton exits. There was a tiny crash and went back up. He exits. Then his best friend makes a shitload of money. So he says, I'm going to go again. And he ends up dead freaking broke because he got stuck in the hype of the bubble. Okay? And as we keep going, same thing with housing bubbles. Same thing. This is Japan, actually. Japan is very important because I told you it has gone up so drastically, crashed, but never recovered. And that's because of the demographics, okay? So I want to kind of slowly wrap this up and talk about why and how to read the real estate economies. But it is very important. Low interest rates, people borrow. But when they borrow, they create a time. They automatically create a cycle within their own household to be able to say that in the future, I will have to spend less to pay down the debt. Period. That's how debt works. Banks, lenders, everyone does the same thing. Now, there comes a point in time where it's danger zone. Danger zone is when you have used all of your resources. The central bank simply cannot lower the interest rates below zero. Yeah, you can do negative interest. That just does not work. So now interest rates are at zero. People are at their maximum levels. There comes a point in time where there's a cycle, 100 years, 75 to 100 years, that the entire economy goes down, but doesn't go down in a recession. It actually goes down into a depression because all the tools have been used to be able to stimulate artificially the economy. Credit is not a solution. And that's where people start jumping on the printers. But to give you an idea, it happened, the long-term debt cycle crashed in 1930s. And throughout 2,000 years, it is 75 to 100 years. I think it's because of generational changes, but that's not a point that's proven. Doesn't matter. Happened in the UK. Whoops, this should have said the 50s. I'll change that for the future. In 1950s, UK went through a complete deleveraging. Japan, as we've spoken 100 times, in the 90s. Spain and Italy did it in the 2010s, very recently, after the financial crisis. So they went through an entire deleveraging process. And it's tough on governments because when a deleveraging happens, the only way governments typically make money is by taxpayers' dollars. The taxpayers get money to be able to then either create jobs, stimuluses, or pay money to the unemployed. But when the economy is shrinking, there's less tax dollars coming in. And then the other option is to be able to go get loans. But a government and an economy works the same as a human being. If I am unable to borrow more money as a government, China, Japan, they're the two biggest investors in America right now, holding trillions of dollars in debt. But there comes a time where China looks at the US and says, I don't know if you can repay us. You're not as credit worthy as you used to be. You've got hundreds of trillions of dollars in debt. You have Medicare to take care of. You have all these retirements. You have all this. We can't lend more money. But the government needs to do something to stop revolutions. How many revolutions have we heard just last year? Cuba, Afghanistan. There's a list, and it goes on and it goes on. If the government does not take care of its people, it will have a social uprising. So and here's my list. There's a massive list of huge protests from Hong Kong, but Hong Kong was a little different. But revolutions where people come together for a cause, and it's usually the middle to lower class. Because what happens in markets like right now, governments and central banks will turn around and invest in the stock market. Who does that help? Not the poor. It helps the rich. So assets keep going up in value, but unfortunately, the poor have zero assets. So it creates animosity, austerity. And that's where there is, on top of controlling an economy, has to control its people. Look at George Floyd, right? It had its cause, but people had enough. And we are going to see that more and more because the income gap is splitting. And I'm going off topic here, but it's very important to understand every element, why the governments do what they do. If they decide not to print money, what are the individuals that are all out of work right now with zero assets going to do? Unfortunately, all these stimulus checks that governments have printed have only helped the rich and further separates the gap because the rich take that money and put it in assets. They already got their bases covered. And that's why you've got all these insane prices going up. It is danger territory, okay? So, printing money, what does that do? If we print money, we are increasing the supply of money that is in circulation. If I'm circulating too much money, supply and demand will dictate that prices will go up, and that's inflation. So there's a very fine line between controlling interest rates and printing money. So let's wrap it up because this is getting so far into the economy that, and like I said, I'm not even touching the demographic cliff. Who's going to pick up if a crash happens? I'm not talking about the world debts, the restructuring, the social unrest. I'm not talking about the income gap. Something's going to happen. And that's why we need to take action. Let's go back on the whole point of the challenge here. It's to be able to control our own economy. So today, I'm 2 hours plus in explaining how the economy works, but it is so crucial to understand it so that you can predict the safest markets to invest in. So I can't even tell you how many times on a daily basis that I get emails, past students, clients, current, future, whatever. Steve, what do I do with my money right now? And again, nobody has the crystal ball. But my biggest and most important suggestion, buy cash flow. I'm not saying buy real estate. I'm saying buy cash flow from real estate. I don't want you to turn around and buy a house, as an asset. It needs to be rentable. And the reason I say that is because interest rates are at rock bottom. I've said it 100 times. I'm not going to repeat myself. We are at a pivotal point. The economy is on the top right now, as it seems. But if you look at the stock markets in the past couple of weeks, it's been crashing over and over and over again on a daily basis. And that's what happened from 2005 to 2008. It took 3 years, 2.5 years for, boom, the world realizing my stocks are worthless. Unfortunately, we now live in a world where baby boomers are relying on those stocks held in their pension funds, held in the stock markets, most of them, or in mutual funds, that can vanish like that. And the likelihood of that happening is extremely high. Holding cash in your bank account last year lost a minimum of 7%. Canada, US, I don't care, because nobody's really showing the real numbers. You need to put that money in play. You need to put it somewhere that's safe. Cash flow is the reason. Let me explain why cash flow. Housing is the world's third biggest need. Aside from food and water, we all need a place to stay, period. So controlling the world's biggest need, top 3 biggest needs, you'll never, ever lose value. Yeah, maybe in a crash, but over the long run, it will always go up. I wish I had a slide. Actually, it'll take me too long to find it and I'll waste everybody's time. Rents in America have never gone down. Since the 1900s, when somebody could rent a place for $5 a month, to today, the average American rental price, I believe, is at $2,100. But rents have never gone down. And that's what's important to understand. Well, Steve, if money's worthless, what's good is cash flow? Even if hyperinflation were to kick in, which I don't think so, but if it were to kick in, supply and demand will increase your rents. Because if somebody now has $10,000 a month of income rather than $5,000, he or she has more money to pay for your rent. Well, Steve, what happens if cryptos take over the fiat currency? Fantastic. You're controlling the world's third biggest need. The moment you control something that everybody needs, you get to dictate price, you get to dictate how you get paid, you get to dictate how often and in what currency. You want to accept only Bitcoin if we live in a world that converts to that? Fantastic. You have the real estate. Nobody can take that away, period. So cash flow, with all the money that's readily available, all these stimulus checks, everything that's happening, tenants have so much money they don't know what to do with. We've seen our rents go up through the roof. You can't even imagine the amounts of money that people now are paying for rents is outrageous. But in the end, well, as a real estate owner, that's a fantastic thing. But in the end, that is going to be your safest place to put your money. And if you don't have money, tomorrow I'm going to be showing you, not in 2 hours, I promise it'll be shorter tomorrow, but I will show you exactly what strategies you can use today, right now, to get into deals so easily, no money down. Like seriously, okay? There's new elements that are in play that did not exist back in 2012 and 13 when I was teaching back then. So many new things are available for us to be able to do more creative deals. So let's jump into real estate, okay? I want to bring you guys down over here. 4 market cycles. And again, very important to reiterate, I am not talking about America. I am talking about market by market and location, geographically, market by market by market, okay? If you look at Texas, the Houston economy is very different than the Dallas economy, than the Austin economy. Different jobs, different types of income, different credit worthiness, different lenders, so many different aspects. So when it comes to selecting the right market to get cash flow in, you have to look at all these elements. Now, something else I really want to make very important. Steve, if a catastrophe was to come, should I not wait? I have people, I think since 2009, that have done nothing yet. You are 100 times better to buy a piece of property right now, as many as you can, because once again, it will always go up, averaged out a 5 to 10 year time frame. If you're saying, Steve, I want to buy a house for myself and my family, and I'm going to have to relocate in 2 to 3 to 4 years from now, I would think twice. For yourself, personal, housing, everything. But for investment purposes, your cash flow will increase so high that today, paying at high prices is well worth it than never doing anything. Again, the peak of the real estate was 2005. The real crash started in 2008. The bottom hit at 2012. Now, That right there is a huge gap, 7 years. How can you work with that? That is not a sustainable business. You can't stop your transactions for 7 years waiting for the bottom. And just like predicting a market crash, there's no crystal ball that'll tell you when the bottom hits. Buy, 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 buy continuously. But educate yourself like you're doing right now. So let's go through the seller markets and all that. I'll go back in presentation mode because these I can do in my sleep. So basically, there's 4 market cycles in an economy. I'm still sharing here. My goodness, you guys are just phenomenally amazing. I'm going to take that as a compliment. That is awesome. You're still here with me. Thank you. Let me take some water here.
There's no longer an elephant on your screen.
There was an elephant on my screen?
Somebody mentioned a joke about the elephant in the room. There was literally a little gray thing on your screen that looks like an elephant. It was cute. Anyway.
Nice. Probably. So, 4 market cycles, okay, guys? And they follow the economy to the T. You've got seller's market phase 1, seller's market phase 2. I'm putting my hands and pointing, but SM1, SM2. Buyer's market phase 1, buyer's market phase 2. I'm just going to go to the slide where they're all here. Just like an economy, there's cycles in real estate. A lot more stable than the stock market, a lot more stable than most. And most importantly, what's cool about real estate is that if the markets do crash, tenants are still there paying you rent. Don't look at the prices. Period. That's it. Just don't look at what it's worth. Just keep cash flowing. Period. Right? But here's how it works. In a seller's market phase 1, they have just come for a crash. So let's imagine 2009, 10, 11. That was your seller's market phase 1. I hate saying for all of America, but for all intensive purposes, let's stick it to America. Okay? So everything is rock bottom. World sucks. Jobs are hard to get. So on and so forth. Then you get a creative state, a creative city. Let's use Texas as an example over the past 2 to 3 years, right? Compare California and Texas. Texas right now is becoming a massive powerhouse because of its incentives that it's offering mega companies such as Tesla, such as, the list goes on and on and on and on. But Texas has been incentivizing companies to build their headquarters anywhere in Texas. I'm sure if I did more research, I can tell you the exact cities here, but let's use Texas as a whole. What does new jobs create? Moving opportunities. Especially in America, they are a very transient society. Canadians, we're boring. If we're born in Ottawa, look at me. I've moved across the world multiple times. Here I am in Ottawa again. Just is. I want to be with my family. I want to be, the kids want to see their grandparents, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying anything bad about Americans that they don't care. That's not my point. But they're very transient. It's the land of opportunity. If I can get a good job in Texas, I'm going to pack up my family and move to Texas. And good for them. So what that does is it increases the population. So job growth increases population. If we are to look deeper, it's more than just job growth. It's government incentives and credit opportunities now that we understand the economy. So people start moving in. They most likely will rent for the first year or two, make sure the job is solid, everything's going well. And now the economic wheel starts rolling and flowing. If Tesla and SpaceX moves over to Texas, and then all of a sudden Amazon decides to build 4 more million square feet places, and more companies are starting to relocate to Texas. I should have had a list for today just as an example. But Texas have been crushing, stealing everyone from California and Florida, 2 massive places where they have such great incentives for companies. What happens is when the population starts growing, the shrinking, the real estate availability starts shrinking from rentals to home ownership or to properties to buy. So, anyways, let's say me and Crystal and I'm sorry, decided to move to Texas. After a year of being an engineer for SpaceX, I'm the guy that builds the rockets. And no comments, please. Rocket science.
Ah!
So, anyways, I've been there for a year. Hun, why are we renting? Let's go buy a house. Houses are dirt cheap. Prices of a mortgage are cheaper than renting. Why? Because we're at the bottom of an economy. So if we go back into my economics, what will the central banks do to stimulate an economy? They're going to lower the interest rates. And there's going to be a point in time where if I'm paying $1,200 a month for a 2-bedroom condo for rent, I could buy this same place right now for $90,000 at a 2.5% interest rate, which may end up being $850 per month. Please don't calculate it. I'm pulling numbers out of my head here as an example. But why are we paying a landlord an extra $350 per month when we can go out and buy our own house? So we got 10 houses to pick from. Seller A through seller 10. They're all asking $75,000. But right now, guys, my things are upside down. This is buyer's markets. I'm so sorry. On the screen, it should be buyer's market phase 1, buyer's market phase 2, seller, blah, blah, blah. Okay? I know, actually, I'm so sorry. We are okay. Because there's very little competition. Ignore what I just said. I get to dictate my price. But I go back to work, and next day, Tommy, my buddy, says, hey, how was your weekend? I say, we just bought a house. My wife and I, we want to start a family, blah, 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 blah. That's a good idea. And then I start explaining that my rents were higher than what a mortgage could be because interest rates are so low. You get where this is going? The inventory shrinks. The moment there comes a point in time where people are still sleeping, because remember, it's hard to say where you are in an economy when you live the regular life, and that's not your job looking at the economy. People are clueless about this stuff. They don't know what's happening. They just fall into the euphoria. We're all millionaires. We're all making money. And your barber's telling you invest in Tesla. It only goes up. True story. I hope he's not here on the line with us, but true story. So, all this being said, Tommy comes back the next weekend. He bought a house. There's no more properties on for sale. And now you can see where we're starting to go up the ladder. Credit is being printed. People are spending more. My income is going up. The bank sees me completely differently, wants to give me more money. So I buy a more expensive house. And then the cycle just keeps going up and up and up and up and up, to a point where I've refinanced my house. I've got credit cards. I've got this. I've got that. My garage has 4 ATVs. I've got, oh my gosh, I want to tell the story of my Phoenix contractor who wanted to buy a Sea-Doo in the desert. I got Sea-Doos and I live in the desert. And anyways, I just consume and consume and consume. And then, so now, just to give you an idea, we're up here at the top. And I come to my wife and I ask her, hey, hun, did you pay the Visa bill? Because I just got a collector calling me. Hun, we couldn't pay the Visa. We had to use it to pay for, I don't know, our son's soccer. Okay, how are we going to pay for the Visa? I don't know, hun. It's pretty tight right now. We're paycheck to paycheck and we're using our line of credit to pay down our credit card and so on and so forth. Sounds familiar, right? Average lifestyle, overspending, interest rates starts creeping up. We get stuck. Okay, well, let's not freak out. Let's talk to the bank and see if they'll give us more money. I borrowed more than I can afford. What does the bank say? No. Okay, what about extending my line of credit on the house? Well, you know, Prices are going up, but you're just not making enough income to do that. Shit. Hun, what's our option? Maybe we should sell the house, sell some assets. What happens then? It's called deleveraging. You start selling your assets, but am I the only one that's tight? No, Tommy's tight. Jane's tight. Her friends are tight. Everybody's tight. So everybody puts their assets back up for sale on the market. What happens when everybody puts their assets on the market? The bubble pops. Collective group of people said, either the asset ain't worth it or I need it to survive and I have too much debt. And then the cycle starts all over again. And remember, guys, it's about a 5 to 8 year period for the up and the down, 15 to 20 in the middle. But it depends. It depends on how much money the governments are printing, the interest rates, how many loans are available. So there's many variables. But an economy works, or the real estate markets works with the economy alongside the same way. It is transactions drive income. Income drives credit. Credit purchases stupid stuff. More people purchase stupid stuff. Prices go up. If prices go up too much, what does the Fed do? They increase interest rates. If they increase interest rates, I now have to pay more towards my debt and spend less. If I stop spending less, and I have to sell my assets that have money, and all of a sudden I realize that they didn't have the real money they had because it was all credit purchased with credit, which created the massive bubble. The bubble pops and the economy falls down. Incomes go down. Governments try spending money, and it's a self-fulfilling or printing money, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, so let's go to my last slide here. Maybe everyone that's here with us is sleeping on the line. Do we know if they're still alive?
I'm still getting some comments. They are.
How to pick the right market. And guys, throughout the week, okay, this is only day one, and I promise you, none of the teachings will be this long. I'm trying to teach you how the economy works, how an entire country works, and how to predict it, okay? So questions, please keep asking. Even though I'm not answering the majority of them, I will in the near future during our week, okay? Because I really like those questions and it helps me really fine-tune my teaching. How do you identify a market? Like I showed you in one of the first slides, like how could we have predicted Pittsburgh would have gone up during the financial crisis? Oklahoma City, why did I go in Tulsa, and so on and so forth. One thing, and it all revolves around credit in the end. How affordable are the homes? Can't be simpler than that. Let me see if I still had my page. I don't have to share. Give me a second, folks, because I had what I believe was one of the best slides I've seen, or stats. Yes, I have it here. Okay. Everybody's going to ask me for the link. I can tell you what I Googled in a second here. Okay. So, Crystal, is there a way for me to send a message to everyone? Type of that. I think I have one. Well, actually, let me get to the right place. And I'll explain what I'm doing in a second here, guys. But I'll share you the resource. So, metropolitan affordability and job growth. Boom. Look at this. Well, here, I'll send the whole page because there's amazing stats on this page. So I have somebody sleeping. See?
David Ballman.
David, I know where you live, man, unless you moved. How you doing, brother? I miss you, man. I hope the family's doing well. So that's the link. Let's look at this chart because I didn't look at this one, but let's see together in a second. This is my secret weapon, the Housing Affordability Index. I don't like this one. This is job growth. It will be my second resource. But let me go back to the one I was looking at this morning so that I can take a screenshot. No, Metropolitan Index. I believe it was this one here. That's the one. This is your gold, guys, For everybody that spent 2 hours and 40 freaking minutes with me right now, this is gold. This is called the Housing Affordability Index. Okay. City, I think it was metropolitan or city. Yeah, metropolitan. Every single metropolitan in the US, and I'll teach you how to use it in a second. Let me scroll down just to show you guys, or open it up on your own computer. I just shared the link. Boom, boom, boom. You can see it's massive. Okay. Now let's pinpoint. Let's go around here. Oh, look at this. Okay. The Housing Affordability Index, the way that it's calculated on the sheet we're looking at right now, this is literally how I pick my markets all the time, guys. And it can never fail. It just cannot, because logic and the economies work like a machine. Timing may be off by a few years, but it don't matter. It always works. A market is affordable at 100%. So let me explain that. Actually, it had a great definition on the website, but I'll tell you in my own words. The Housing Affordability Index is broken down as if a market, it compares wages and housing price and how it has to borrow at the interest rates and blah, blah, blah. The number you're looking for is anything above 100%. That's what I'm getting at, okay? So if we were, earlier I was looking at Boulder, Colorado, because Crystal and I absolutely love Boulder. We've had some fantastic times. Boulder, look at here. What this is saying to me right now is the market is about 9% above what people can afford. So what I'm saying is, I don't know the average income. I don't care, because the index is what matters. Somebody making $100,000, it's broken down on a monthly basis, but for simplistic reasons, I'm going to tell you $100,000 per year. A house right now is an average of $109,000 per year. Now, that's not how it's calculated, because $100,000 per year means, or say $120,000 per year means $10,000 a month, and a mortgage would be $10,000 a month, give or take. Okay, that's how the Housing Affordability Index works. So the secret to picking the right market, step one. Okay, don't take this as the one and only here, because let me give you an example. Akron. I want to pick something I've never heard of. Actually, I've been in Binghamton. Oh my God, somebody pulled a gun on me in Binghamton. I don't want to tell that story, but that was terrifying. But let's still look at it. Binghamton. It's a drive-through town, basically. I'm so sorry if you live there. That is not meant to be insulting, but it's a tiny little place. Right now, the prices are a third, if not more, cheaper than anywhere else in America. Or not in America, but what it's telling me is that the average person can buy 3 houses. That's what it's telling me. The prices are at 300%. And I'm probably doing a terrible job at explaining it, but the higher the number, the better. Okay. But am I telling you that's the place you want to go and invest in now? No, that doesn't mean anything, because you could also turn out to have 50% vacancy rate because there was only one factory that was operating in Binghamton and it closed down. So you have to find the markets that are affordable. Let's go to, I had Los Angeles earlier to give you an idea. Los Angeles, right here. Look at that. It is below the 100%, which means it makes it extremely hard to afford. It's unaffordable. If we had Vancouver on this list right now, it would be even lower. Toronto, lower. Los Angeles is still, I mean, it's a very expensive market, but it's still uncomparable to the Canadian markets. But Canada's 300% over debt to income ratio. It's not, Sorry, I don't want to confuse you. Very different statistic I'm using right now. But you want to be able to stay away from anything near 100 or lower. So the higher the number, the better. Okay. So I'm not going to spend too much time here on this because you have access to the direct link that I shared right there. But all that being said, this is the first place I'm going to go to, period. The second place I'm going to go is I'm going to go on Wikipedia. So let's pick something that, okay, let's pick Minneapolis. Okay? Minneapolis, that's not a bad number at all. I could buy 2 houses with the average income. Let's go find out details. So I'm going to go and see what is the population of Minneapolis, St. Paul. I mean, I'm just going to go like this. Okay. 420, but hold on. I want the metro because I know it's going to be more than that. What is the population of Minneapolis metro? I don't know what the metro is. I think that's what it was earlier. There you go. 3.6 million. Very important. I want the metropolitan area, not the city. Because remember, Canada, for me, we've I can never say this word, Crystal. Amalgamated. She's been teaching me for 8 years now how to use that word. Amalgamated most of its cities. So the city of Ottawa used to be broken down into 4 different counties, but now became one big mega city. So if I was to say what's the population of Ottawa, they would say 1 million. But in the US, it is county by county, city by city, and so on and so forth. So you want to make sure you're looking at the metropolitan area. Very important. So it passes my second test. What is the population of Minneapolis? Third test, and I actually don't want to go too deep because that's the rest of the week we're going to be doing this. So let me just tell you what we're looking for and do your own research, and we will further go into it as the week progresses. Remember, sign up if you want access to tomorrow and the next couple of days. It's free, okay? But I need to send you the emails where and how to access the community. So I want to make sure housing is affordable. Stick to that because places crash if housing aren't affordable to the average person, period. Yes, prices can be readjusted in a Huntsville, Alabama. I saw Huntsville. What's my numbers? Huntsville. See, the average person could afford at today's interest rates to purchase 2 homes. And today's interest rates is very important. I don't want to get into too much. Who cares? Stick to this and you'll be fine. There may be a correction, but it'll be 100 times less steep than if you were in New York City, if you were in any cities that's closer to 100 or below. Okay. Second criteria, make sure it's a large population. Now, I'm not talking about if you're investing in mobile homes and storage facilities. There's different strategies. I'm talking about human rental residential properties, which include houses, small multis, and multifamily properties. That's what I'm referring to. Because if you purchase property, you add value to the house, which is my main strategy on any piece of property that I acquire or apartment complex. You want to be able to have a buyer in return. If you're in such a small city that nobody can find, it's reliant on very little jobs. If the job markets turn around, if the economy crashes, as we all know, something's going to give in the next couple of years, you're stuck with that building at a very high vacancy. Stick to 1 million people plus, you will be fine. 3, make sure they got a diversified economy. I've always been a little afraid in the past of Texas. I've owned a lot of apartment complexes in northern Texas, Arlington, Richmond Hill. I think Richmond Hill, my big one was there 15 years ago now, 10, whatever, who cares? Important is make sure it's got a diversified economy. What I didn't like about it in the beginning in Texas, Houston mostly, very oil driven, and it was solely relying on oil. If oil goes well, the market goes well. If oil goes bad, markets go bad. And it has nothing to do with electrical cars and all this kind of stuff. It's just, it is volatile. And if you only rely on one type of job, and that's what I mean, is oil is an industry. Then you've got aviation, you've got finances, you've got produce, you've got. If you can prove that there's a good 3 to 5 different headquarters of mega Fortune 500 companies that are not in the same sector, it is a good market to invest in. Okay, so that's the third criteria. Fourth, can you rent your real estate? I used to say under $100,000, you need to find inventory under 100,000, but we're no longer in a foreclosure world. There's no foreclosures out there. But can you rent your property for what I call the golden rule of 1%? If you are looking at realtor.com, I'm not saying that's going to be the best site to look for real estate, but for now, Zillow, realtor.com, Redfin, don't matter, any of these sites. And you go on, you need to look at how much can I purchase a property for, and does it fit the 1% rule? What the 1% rule is, I'm going to use 200,000. If I'm buying a $200,000 home in a decent neighborhood, can I rent it for at least $2,000 per month? It's really that simple. So I'm sorry I don't have it on the screen here, but let me repeat that. If I find a $500,000 home, I mean, that would be a very different approach. It would be an Airbnb approach, which we're going to talk about tomorrow. But if I find a $500,000 home, can I rent it for $5,000 per month? If it's $150,000, $1,500 per month. That is not how you evaluate real estate, but it is a good rule to be able to say yay or nay to a market. So is there inventory of properties that fit the 1% rule? It works anything under 3 units, okay? So if you have 3 units inside, is the purchase $300,000? Can I rent every unit for a minimum of $1,000? And you can go on rentometer.com. Zillow now gives you the rental of a specific unit. There's many tools out there. I will be sharing throughout the week, but for everyone to know, 1% rule, check out. Is there inventory around a price that I can rent for 1% in a decent neighborhood? We'll talk about how to evaluate our neighborhoods further down. I think that's going to be on Wednesday or Thursday, okay? And that's it. Housing Affordability Index, million population plus, Fortune 500 companies, diversified economy that it's not only reliant on one, and 1 million plus in population. Ladies and gentlemen, I need to go to the bathroom so freaking bad, it's not even funny. We've been together now for almost 3 hours. Crystal, you asked me, Steve, how much time do you think it'll take? I said, I promised everybody 60 to 90 minutes, but I'm so afraid it's going to be 3 hours because there's so much stuff I got to share. And it's been 3 hours. You have been so phenomenal. Now, remember, this is day 1 of the One Property Away Challenge. My goal with you guys this week is to be able to not only find the best markets. Tomorrow, we'll go through it again. I'll try to make it it's hard for me to be interactive at the same time, but inside the community, okay? If you sign up at onepropertychallenge.com, I'll bring you inside my coaching community. For everybody to know, it's an old community that I had not used for over 5 years. Unfortunately, I was going to use a brand new community that we even have an app on. And then we got a message last week, right? On Friday, I believe it was, before I was going to go live last Saturday, saying the technology crashed on the mega company that did the app. So everything's screwed up. Like I tell the children, who cares? Let's figure something out. Thank you, Facebook Live, for accommodating us. Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. But tomorrow we'll be within our community. Ask your questions there. Every question you've put on this video here has been recorded. I will be going through them over the next couple of days. Right now, we got no kids, so I want to have fun with Crystal. I didn't mean it that way. Just chill, okay? Seriously. Didn't want to get weird here. But tomorrow, 12 o'clock, same thing. Tomorrow, we're going to be breaking down how we can acquire real estate in 2022 in every single strategy. Subject twos, Airbnb-ing, anyways, every single strategy. I've created a funnel that we're going to be going through. It's only going to be one slide tomorrow. So it's not a PowerPoint presentation. It's me going through it, probably sitting. We'll figure it out tomorrow, maybe on the couch. But I want to break down every single strategy so that on day 3, which is going to be Monday, we now will have our market and the type of real estate strategy we're going to use. Then we're going to build the plan to take action on that. So today's homework, very simple. Identify the 3 best markets that fit this criteria. Take a screenshot right now on your computer. Unfortunately, I'm on a Mac. Oh, who cares? Just take a screenshot, take your phone, take a picture. This is your simple criteria. I want you to identify 3 best markets to invest in right now. And then we'll be able to brainstorm on that on Wednesday on our Q&A call, okay? So I hope you're going to have a fantastic weekend. Number 2, I know the economy has been weird. It's been tough with the pandemic. Restaurants are open, they're closed. Hockey for the kids, no, it's closed. Horseback riding, this and that and this and that. Can't even get my damn hair cut. I know it's tough. And for 2020, we rolled with it, thinking 2021 would have been different. I saw everybody 2021 saying, oh, this is amazing. And then it crashed again. And 3 days after 2022, half of Canada went into lockdown, and it's been terrible on a sense of if you're relying on anything. The goal of this challenge is to be able to take freaking control of your circumstances and outcomes. We have to stop relying on external things to control us. You have everything it takes to become successful and to turn things around in 2022. We just have to do it. We got to stop blaming it on this and that. We just got to flipping do it. So make sure you are surrounded in the right environment. Stick with me so that I can support you as best as I can. Just if it's inspiration, motivation, asking questions, guidance, whatever it is. This is my first day, my first time coming back after 6, 7, 8 years, and it's exciting. You know, I didn't have my PowerPoint slides, nothing ready, and I was just so flipping excited to come here with you guys and share this. So I want to thank you all for spending that 3 hours with me. I know it's the first time I teach it, so again, it's a little all over the place, and I still hope the message really centered well and understood. If you want clarification, feel free, obviously, to go on YouTube. And Ray Dalio, actually, if you go on YouTube, simply search the term, how the economic machine works. And it explains exactly what I did in a very well thought out manner, because it's probably his 15th time practicing that script, but it doesn't matter. It will re-explain everything I said without the real estate information, but understanding how the economic machine works is so important. I can't believe they don't teach it in schools. They don't teach it in the media. They don't teach it to anybody. But we got to be able to take our blinders off and really step back and evaluate, is this really possible that real estate prices are going up during a crisis? Is it really possible for the stock market to trade at higher earnings? And a legend like Warren Buffett doesn't even grasp what the heck is going on, and he's just stockpiling cash and cash because a buying frenzy is coming on the equities markets. So take off your blinders. Let's take control and let's get this done, guys. You have everything it takes. There's zero excuse. I love you very much. I really got to go. So I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much for being here. Same time, insider community. If you don't have access to the community or you didn't get accepted yet, Crystal and I have been kind of busy in the last 3 hours. Don't worry about it. We will accept you in. And we'll see you tomorrow, guys. Take care. Do you know how to close it?
End stream.
End stream. Okay. Bye-bye. Bye. Oh, wait.
I think you're still on.
I know I'm still live, but where's my cursor? This is the awkward part of ending a Zoom. I think everybody goes through that. Okay, bye. I miss you.
Okay,
How do I shut it? I know, now I'm just messing. I'm having too much fun.
Okay.